This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Abba. Welcome everyone to the first Shiur of our new season, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. We begin with the beginning, Parshas Bereishis. So what I want to focus on today is a different way of understanding Chumash. Certainly when we look at the Psukim, we like to understand it as narrative, as storyline, but hopefully we'll open our eyes to see that just because it reads and maybe at first glance it seems like narrative, but there is some underlining pinnings and building blocks of what's taking place on a much deeper level. So of course everybody knows the first pasuk in Chumash, Bereishis bara Elokim, es hashamayim v'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. So we know there are different Targumim. There's something called Targum Onkelos, which was redacted by Onkelos Hager, who had a tradition from Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. And there's something called Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, which according to the Chida was not written by Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel. And then there's something called Targum Yushalmi. Actually, the Chida writes that Targum Yonasan ben Uziel is just a different version of Targum Yushalmi, but the printers had to come up with a different name for it to differentiate between Targum Yushalmi and the other Targum Yushalmi, so they created a name, Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. In fact, Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel wrote the Targum on Nevi'im, but not on the Chumash. But in Targum Yushalmi proper, the Targum on the first pasuk in Chumash is Bechuchma bara Hashem. With wisdom, God created. The question is, which word in the first pasuk means Chachma? Bereishis means the beginning, bara means created. How does the Targum see in this pasuk anything about God creating the world with wisdom? In fact, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Ba'asara ma'amorish nivra olam. God created the world with 10 statements, with 10 utterances, with 10 words. I would understand if the Targum said, Be'amira, Be'dibor, bara Hashem. What's Be'chachma, bara Hashem? So we begin with a comment of the Maggid of Mezrich, Rav Dov Ber of Mezrich, in a very rare sefer called Or Torah or Rimzei Torah. Not highly available, I don't believe, but I got it on Otra Chachma. And he asks, the Gemara says in Masechta Rosh Hashanah on Daf Lamed Beis, commenting on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, Va'asara ma'amoros nivra ha'olam. So you have on your sheet a number 5. The Gemara asks, Hai ninu, what are they? The Gemara asks, Vayomer de Bereishis teshave. There are only 9 statements in Bereishis. If you count the Vayomers, you only have 9 Vayomers. So how could we say Ba'asara ma'amoros nivra ha'olam with 10 statements God created the world? It only says Vayomer 9 times. Vayomer Elokim Yihar, Vayomer Elokim Yikavu Hamayim, Vayomer Elokim Tadshe Aretz Desha, Vayomer Elokim Toitze Aretz, and so on and so forth. It only says Vayomer 9 times. So how could the Mishnah say Ba'asara ma'amoros nivra olam? And the Gemara says Bereishis nami mamarhu. The first creation, the creation of the Shamayim, was also a mamar, was also an amira. In fact, when the pasuk says Bereishis bara Elokim, there was an amira there. There was a statement there. It just doesn't say it. But the Gemara says we know there was an amira. How do I know? Because it says in Tehillim, B'dvar Hashem Shamayim Na'asu. With the word of Hashem, heaven was created. So the first pasuk, it's as if it says Vayomer. Okay? And the question is, what do you mean it's as if it said Vayomer? So why didn't it say Vayomer? It should say Vayomer Elokim Yihi Shamayim Va'aretz. Why didn't it say Vayomer? What do you mean Bereishis Nami Mamarhu? So let it say Vayomer Elokim Yihi Shamayim Va'aretz. So I once saw in the Malbim, it's not on the sheet, it didn't make it to the sheet, but it's very important to know. The Malbim writes that there's a difference between Amira and Dibor. Dibor is when you speak. Some people, they speak, but nobody's listening. Some Rabbanim tell me they do that, right? You could speak, but it doesn't necessarily mean anybody hears what they're saying. And then there's Amira. Amira, by definition, means A to B, Ruvain to Shemain. Amira connotes, Amira has the meaning that somebody is speaking to somebody else. Now Rashi tells us in Bereishis that everything was created on day one. All matter. The sun, the moon, the earth, the plants, the trees, everything was created on day one. And On subsequent days, God just placed it in their correct locations, but everything was created on the first day. That means that when we say that Brias Ha'olam was Yesh Me'ayin, right? Yesh Me'ayin means something out of nothing. In Latin, we say ex nihilo. When we say that creation was something out of nothing, that's only the first creation. That's only the first day. Everything else that was created subsequently was created from that original matter. Says the Malbim that once God created original matter, He then said to that matter, it should be the water, it should be the dry land, it should be the plants, it should be the animals, it should be the fish. So from Amira, from the first statement and on, God is speaking to something. He's speaking to matter. So it could say Vayomer. But the original creation of Yesh Me'ayin, God had nothing to speak to. Rebbe wasn't talking to anything. There was nothing in existence. So it can't say Vayomer. So therefore it just says Bereishis bara like him. But the word Vayomer would not be a correct terminology because there's nothing there. But subsequently, there is matter that God addresses, and He says to that matter, you should be A, B, and C. That's how the Malbim understands it. But what we're going to examine tonight is really an amazing thing, and it happens to be that maybe about 2 hours ago, I was sitting in the doctor's office, wonderful doctor, and we got out of there so quickly, and I got a phone call. I got a phone call from my friend Gedalia Schwartz in Virginia. He always asks me, Rabbi, what sefer could I get you? So I said, you know what? I heard that they came out with a new sefer from the Ben Ish Chai, from a manuscript that they found from the Ben Ish Chai last year, and I heard it's available. So he tracked it down. He said, guess what? It's in Zundel Berman's. You know where Zundel Berman's is? I said, I'm 2 blocks away. So I picked it up. He had already paid for it. I picked it up on the way home. And lo and behold, what you have on your sheet number 3, it's also in the Chidushim, in the manuscript of the Ben Ish Chai. It's called Parshas Hareach. Hareach stands for Rabbi Yosef Chaim. Parshas Rabbi Yosef Chaim. So he writes as follows. All the Sifrei Mekubalim write that the very first thing that was created were the Oisiyos of the Torah, the Alef Beis. And that has to be because everything that was created the Amira, with words. You can't have words without letters. So that means before God uttered any statement, He had to first create letters. So the first thing that was created, before He created light and darkness and the heaven and earth and the sun and the stars and the moon, He had to create the letters of the Alef Beis. That means the first thing that was created was Alef through Taf. Says the Sefer Or Torah of the Magid Meizrich, says the Berachas Harech of the Ben Ish Chai, Bereishis bara Elokim. What did God create first? S, Alef to Taf. Bereishis bara Elokim, S. In the beginning, God created S, Alef, the letters Alef through Taf. That was the first creation. Why? Because He can't create anything without Amira, because B'asar Mamar is never Olam. But to have Amira, you need words. To have words, you need letters. So the first thing that God created were the letters of the Alef Beis. So here's the problem. That's good once they're letters. But how did God create the letters? It couldn't have been Ba'amira. That's why the Targum teaches, that's why the Targum understands the first pasuk. Bereishis bar Elokim. How did God create? Es? B'chachmasa bar Elokim. With wisdom. That means the first creation wasn't a real Amira. It was just a thought. It was just a mental creation. It was bechachma. It was b'machshava levad b'lo amira. That's why, even though the Mishnah says ba'asara ma'amoros nivra olam, but the first pasuk it doesn't say vayomer because technically it wasn't amira. It wasn't a statement. Technically it was just a thought, and that's why the Targum Yerushalmi says b'chuchma bara Hashem. So what we have now, Rabbi Isai, is this concept that God created the first matter, even before the cell, even before the DNA, the chromosome, even before the atom and the proton. The first creation was, even before the proton was, even before the electron, was the Alef Beis. The Alef Beis is the most basic building block of all matter. And that's why the Targum says, B'chachmasa bara Hashem. Interestingly, the Bnei Yissaschar quotes the Magid on Rosh Hashanah. This is if you want to know how this Shiur developed, this Shiur started already Leil Rosh Hashanah. Bnei Yissaschar writes, what's the inyan of Simanim on Rosh Hashanah? because before the world was created, there were no even words. So how do you communicate? Just like sign language, signs. That's the inyan of simanim on Rosh Hashanah, where we're going back to pre-language with words and letters. We can only communicate with concepts and ideas and simanim. That's the idea of simanim, the night of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, with that introduction, Rabbi Say, we're going to get a deeper understanding of the events of Chumash, and particularly Bereishis. When we understand, we're not just looking at narrative, we're not just looking at storyline, we're looking at the Alef Beis, moving, rotating, transposing, and I'll explain what I mean. Let's begin in the following way. There's a pasuk, look at number 12. So Adam HaRishon eats from the Yetzadas. Hashem said, you could eat whatever fruit you want. You want oranges, you want apples, you want pears, whatever you want, pomegranates, dates, figs. Just don't eat the fruit. And Adam ate the fruit. Because Chava ate the fruit, and Chava gave it to Adam. So Hashem comes to Chava, he said, Chava, why do you eat the fruit? And Chava uses possibly the most unusual word in the whole Chumash. Vayomer Hashem Elokim lo isha, God said to the woman, Mazoi sasis, what do you do here? Vayomer isha, the woman said, Hanochash hishiani v'oichel. The snake, hishiani? What does that mean? Hishiani? It means he seduced me. We know that's what it means, but it's an unusual word. We don't find it elsewhere. Hishiani? Comes Rabbi Vadia Yosef in his commentary to Pirkei Avos, and he quotes the Arizal, which I don't know that it's found in the Kisvei Ari. We'll see it's found in other Sifrei Kabbalah. He quotes the Arizal. And the Ari says that if you look carefully at the word Hishiani is really two names of Hashem. Which two names of Hashem? Shakai and Alef Daled Nun Yud. You say, what are you talking about? There's no Shakai in Hishiani? There's no Alef Daled Nun Yud? Yes. The Nachash stole a letter from the word Shakai, and he stole a letter from the word Alef Daled Nun Yud. Which letter did he steal? He stole the Dalet out of Shakai, and he stole the Dalet out of Alef Daled Nun Yud. So if you look at the word Hishiani, the Nachash, she, what's she? She is Shakai without the Dalet. What's Ani? Ani is Alef Daled Nun Yud without the Dalet. So basically we have the snake. We know what letter he's after. He is a Daled Ganav. He steals Dalids from the Shem of Hashem. Hishiani is a compound word of two names of God, removing a Dalid number 1, removing Dalid number 2. The Nachash stole 2 Dalids. Therefore, says Rebbe Vadia, and we'll see there are different versions of this. There's a pasuk in Mishlei, look at number 14. Ashrei Adam Shoymei Ali. Fortunate is a person who listens to me. Lishgoid, to be diligent. Al dal soisai, on my doors, yoim yoim, every day. So the Arizal asks, what do you mean my doors? Why 2 doors? If you say al deles sheli, why dal soisai? Why 2 doors? Dal soisai is plural dalids. By the way, there's no letter dalid. We Ashkenazim, the Gemara says that the way dalid is written is dalid. It's Gemara in Shabbos kuf dalid. Dalid, lamed, taf. Pronounced dalit. The dalit, the reason the dalit should have a dot in it, it's pronounced like a tuf. It's spelled dalit lamed tuf. The Nachash stole the dalit of Shakai. He stole the dalit of Alef Daled Nun Yud. However, Ashrei Adam Shoymei Ali Lishgoid Al Dal Soisai Yom Yom. Fortunate is a person who's diligent to come to the Beis Medrash twice a day. Once in the morning, once in the evening. When you come in the morning, you restore Dalet number 1. When you come in the evening, you restore Dalet number 2. You take the Hishiani, you make the Shakai, Shalem. You take the Ani, you make the Alef Dal Nun Yud, Shalem. The 2 visits to the Beis Medrash daily restore the 2 Dalets of Hishiani. Says the Arizal. Hafla v'fel, it's an unbelievable thing. We look at the word Hishiani, we don't even know what's going on over there. But the Arizal is Megala, that the Nachash co-opted, hijacked 2 Dalits from the word Hishiani. That's one version. There's a sefer on Chumash called Yalkut Ruveni. Yalkut Ruveni is a collection of midrashim and early Kabbalistic comments, and he brings down the same idea from Mem Gimel Ayin. Who's Mem Gimel Ayin? Megala Amukos. In the name of the Ravid, in the Ravid's commentary to the Sefer Yetzirah. Exactly the same as Rabbi Vadia brings down from the Arizal, with one little nuance of difference. And that is, when Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas, the Nachar stole 2 Dalids. And how are we mashlim the 2 Dalids? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Dalid? Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuso Le'olam Va'ed. The Dalid at the end of Echad. The Dalid at the end of Va'ed. Various places have one of the 2 Dalids big, sometimes both big. These are the 2 big Dalids. So that's why the Gemara says, really, a person should try to learn in the morning and the night. If a person's not able to, he could pater himself b'kriyas shema shel shachas, b'kriyas shema shel arvis. So the 2 pshatim could work together. And there's another source of this in the Sefer Zera Bereich of Rav Barachia ben Yitzchak Isaac Shapira. But lots of luck trying to read it. But I believe that's what he says as well. It's basically impossible to read. But it's quoted as saying this idea that the Nachar stole the 2 Dalids, and our avodah is through Liman Torah of Ashrei Adam Shemei Ali Lishkoid Al Dal Soisa Yom Yom, to learn twice daily. We restore the 2 Dalids. You say Shema and Baruch Shem, you restore the 2 Dalids. So I found, interestingly, there's a sefer on Slichos. The name of the sefer is Devar HaMelucha of Rav Shaul Brach. Shaul Brach was a Hungarian Rosh Yeshiva. So I was close with Rav Obam, Rav Meir Chayzik Obam. He told me his father was a Talmud of Rav Shaul Brach. In fact, I got him the sefer. He was very moved by the sefer, because he has the original copy of the sefer, and he was never able to read it, and they just republished it, so I was able to give him a readable copy. Anyway, in Slichos we say like this. Rachtia, anytime. Yeah? In Slichos we say, Kedalim ucharashim dafaknu dilasecha, dilasecha dafaknu racham mechanan. Yeah, remember that? Right? Kedalim ucharashim dafaknu dilasecha, dilasecha dafaknu racham mechanan. So, what's this mention of the 2 doors? Why do we mention Delasayim 2 times? Dafaknu, Delasecha, Dafaknu, Racham Mechanon. And Rav Shaul Brach says, based on this Arizal, based on this concept of the Ari, that the Nachar stole the 2 Dalids from Shakai and Alef Dalid Nun Yud, and when we knock on God's door twice a day, Kedalim Echorashim Dafaknu, Delasecha, Dafaknu, Racham Mechanon, we're mashlam, we restore the 2 Dalids. Okay. That's the introduction to today's shiur. So, 2 things we learned so far. Bereishis bar Elokim S. The first thing God created were the letters of the Alef Beis. Secondly, we know that this is a concept that the figures in Gan Eden were privy to, because obviously the Nachash knew that to undermine what was happening in Gan Eden, he needs to co-opt letters of the Alef Beis. Let's examine the following. We mentioned on Sukkos, in the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, second night of Sukkos. We're going to go back to this to explain it deeper. The Gemara in Sukkos says on Daf Nun Beis, Darash Rabbi Yehuda la'asid lavai meviyai hakadosh baruch hu liyetzar hara v'sheichtai. In the future, God is destined to slaughter the Yetzar Hara. So what in the world does that mean? God's going to slaughter the Yetzar Hara? The Yetzar Hara is a malach, he's an angel, he doesn't have a neck, he's not a behema. You can't shecht the Yetzar Hara. What does it mean that the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to shecht the Yetzar Hara? What's the symbolism? What's the meaning of that? So, the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, he explains as follows: what is the name of the Yetzar Hara? What's the name of the Sitra Achra? The Samach Mem, we call him Samach Mem Alef Lamed. Yeah, Samach Mem Alef Lamed. It's a bad guy. You don't want to meet him in a dark alley. He's a mean guy. Samach Mem Alef Lamed. Interesting, if you look at those letters, and we explain this, Samach Alef Lamed is actually the name of Hashem. In Masechta Sukkah, it says that God has 72 names, that is created by 3 psukim in Mishalach. Each pasuk has 72 letters. And Rashi explains, using a formula of first, last, first, right? You could create 72 different names of Hashem. So you have 3 psukim right before Kriyas Yamsuf. Each pasuk has 72 letters. And using the formula first, last, first, you can make 72 different names of Hashem. We explain Ani is one of Hashem's name. Vahai is one of Hashem's name. One of God's names is Samach Alef Lamed. It's actually Gematria 91. Samach is 60, Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, 91. Those are the 2 names of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Aleph Dalet Nun Yud. But Samach Aleph Lamed is one of God's names. So amazingly, the Satan, he has 3 letters of God's name. The only thing is, he has a mem. And that mem, guess what it stands for? Misa, death. So when Chazal say, when the Gemara says in Sukkah, God's going to shech the Malach HaMaves, it means that we're going to take out the mem. Once we take out the mem, we've completely disarmed the Yetzer Hara. Not only have we disarmed him, we've completely transformed him from bad guy to divine being, to Samach Aleph Lamed. But when we say we're going to shech the Yetzer Hara, that means we're going to use like laser precision to remove that bad letter, remove the mem. Because the mem, it's brought down in the Sefer Kilas Yaakov, the mem stands for Misa. Okay, so that's an important idea to know. The letter mem stands for Misa. It's not a good thing to see a floater, right? You have to report to your doctor if you see floaters, but certainly if you see a floating mem, not a good sign. If you're walking down the street and you see a mem, not good. Now, how do we know that the letter mem is a bad sign? So the Zohar HaKadosh says, look at number 9. Vateireh ha'isha, the woman saw, ki toiv ha'etz lamachal, the tree was good to eat. V'chisavahu la'inayim, it was desirous to the eyes. V'nechmod ha'etz lahaskel, it was desirous to comprehend. Vatikach mi piriyai, she took. Doesn't say piriyai. Doesn't say she took the fruit. Mi piriyai, meaning the Zohar says mem piriyai. She took the mem. When she ate that fruit, she took the mem down to this world. She brought the mem down to this world. She brought misa la'olam. Now, why does the mem make misa? We'll see in a moment. The Zohar says there are 3 words in this pasuk. Vatera begins with vav taf. Vatikach begins with vav taf. Vatitain begins with the vav taf. She took the mem. The mem then was like this free radical that attached itself to the letters vav taf. Mem vav taf misa. She brought misa to the world. Vatikach mi piriyai. She freed the mem from the piriyai, and it attached itself to the vav and the taf. Says the Zohar, that floating mem, the flying mem, is very dangerous. Watch out for the flying mem. Says the Zohar, look at number 10. We know when Pinchas saw the act of Zimri and Cosby, so he took revenge. But the pasuk says, Vayar Pinchas, and Pinchas saw. What did Pinchas see? It says that he saw. What did he see? Says the Zohar, what Pinchas saw? He saw a floating mem. And he says, Oy vey, I remember the last time there was a floating mem in the world. It's bad stuff. Bad things happen when they're floating mems. Right, Alvin? Right. But when you see that floating mem, it's bad things. So Pinchas got very scared. Now listen to the Zohar. It's mind-boggling. Pinchas, you spell Pei, Yud, Nun, Ches. Pei is 80, Yud is 10, Nun is 50, Ches is 8, Samach is 60, right? So Pei and Yud, 80 and 10 is 90, Nun, 50, that's 140, Ches, 8, 148, Samach, 60, 208. Who else is 208? Yitzchak. Yitzchak is 208. When Pinchas was getting zealous, he was basically, the Zohar says, being mislabish. He was cloaking himself with the midah of Yitzchak. After all, they have the same gematria. They're both 208. And then he sees the floating mem, and he's saying, Oy vey, if that floating mem ever attaches itself to a vav and a taf, we're in big trouble. Vayar Pinchas, Pinchas saw, says the Zohar, what did he see? He saw a mem. So you know what he did to the mem? He took it. And when you have a mem, and you attach it to 208, Vayikach Roimach biyadai. What's Roimach? 248. He took the mem, He's 208. He attached the mem. Instead of having the mem attach itself to the vav and the taf, he attached the mem to himself. That was the roimach, that was the sword, that was the spear that he used to take revenge against Zimri and Cosby. So it's half of a fella. Here we're reading Psukim and Chumash, and we think it's a story, it's a narrative, and these tzaddikim, they see letters, they see the building blocks. Their neshama is able to sense down to the most minute particle of what's transpiring. They see the oisios of the Torah being maneuvered around. Pinchas sees a floating mem. He says if it attaches itself to a vav and the taf, it's going to bring misal olam. He grabs the mem. He's mitzaref it to his shame. When Achava took the fruit, she didn't take a fruit. Vatikach mi pirya, she took a mem. And the mem attached itself to a vav and the taf. That's what we need, a zoyar. We need these mafarshim. They're looking at the psukim with a microscope. Under the microscope, you see the atoms, you see the DNA, you see the chromosomes, you see the most minute particle of what's transpiring in the Chumash. Okay. What we would like to examine tonight is that why is the ois mem misa? Why? Just because the word misa begins with mem? That's why mem is misa? There are a lot of words that begin with mem. Moshe, Malchus, Matot, what? Mitzvah, Matisyahu. All right, we get the point, right? So, there are a lot of words. All of a sudden, oh, mem is misa. Mehechi teisi, mem is misa. Because one word, why does the mem represent misa? So, I thought of something, Baruch Hashem. On Simchas Torah, it was like 10 minutes before, about 30 minutes before Mincha. Hashem saved me, otherwise, I would have to do a rerun, and people can say, oh, I heard that shir 7 years ago, you don't have anything new. So Baruch Hashem, it's brand new stuff, nobody ever heard this. Okay. Masechta Brachos, the beginning of Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, begins with what letter? Me'ei Mosai Karna Shema Ba'arvis begins with the Ois Mem. How does Shisha Sidrei Mishnah end? Amar Rav Shimon ben Chalafta, Leimatza Hakadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha LiYisrael Ela Hashalom Shenemar Hashem Oizamo Yitain Hashem Yivarech Es Amoy Hashalom. It begins with a mem, it ends with a mem, but it's a different kind of mem. What kind of mem does it begin with? It begins with what's called a regular mem, or the Shas calls it mem psucha, an open mem. It ends with mem sofis, end a mem, a final mem, call it what you want. It's called, the Gemara calls it, mem sesuma, a closed mem. Okay? Closed mem. Interesting. Is that of note? Is it of note that Shas begins with an open mem and ends with a closed mem? You could look through Tanakh, and there's a rule. Whenever letters are in middle of a word, they're open. Whenever you have the mem, the nun, the tzadi, the pei, the chaf at the end of a word, it's an end of letter. It's a mem. It's a soifis, right? Menatzpach soifim amram. So whenever a mem's in the middle of a word, it's open. Whenever it's at the end, it's closed. A nun, whenever it's in the middle, it's open. Whenever it's at the end, it's closed. A tzadi, a pei, a chaf. There are two exceptions. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya that talks about the Yemos HaMashiach, Le'marbei HaMisra U'Lashalom Ein Kates, where the word Le'marbei, look at that word, look at number 21. You ever see anything like that? You see the word Le'marbei? You have a closed mem in the middle of the word. What's going on? It's supposed to be an open mem. It's supposed to be a regular mem. What's an end of mem doing in the middle of the word? There's a pasuk in Nehemiah where the king of Persia turns to Nehemiah. He says, Nehemiah, why are you in such a bad mood? And Nehemiah says, of course I'm in a bad mood. The walls of Yerushalayim are breached. Look what Nehemiah says. I went out to the Gai gate. Asher Haim Prutzim. Look at the word Haim. The word haim, it should be hey, final mem. But it's not. It's a hey and a regular mem. What in the world is going on here? You have one exception to the rule, Lemarbe HaMisra, where there's a final mem, the middle of the word. You have one exception to the rule, Asher Haim, where there's an open mem, the end of the word. What's going on? Is it a mistake? It's not a mistake. Says Rabbeinu B'chaye, we have a tradition, we have a Messiah, that the word Lemarbe HaMisra, there's an end of mem, there's a final mem in the middle of the word, and we have a tradition that in Nehemiah, there's a regular mem at the end of the word. Why? Well, we know in Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to his children when Mashiach would come, but it was sealed off from him. That's why in Parshas Vayechi, the Parsha is sealed off. There's no opening between the end of Vayigash and the beginning of Vayechi. It's a Parsha Sesuma. Sesuma means that what's going to happen in the future is being sealed off. So what we learn from here is that even though we know Mashiach is going to come, we know we're going to have an Achros Hayamim, we know we have a great future, but right now we don't know when it's going to be. It's sealed off. Lemarbe HaMisra u'Lashalom ein kates. Lemarbe HaMisra means unlimited authority, unlimited peace. Do we have unlimited authority today? Do Jews have unlimited authority? Of course not. Do we have unlimited peace? Of course not. What is that talking about? It's talking about the Yemais HaMashiach. Oh, that's why it's a sealed mem. Why is it a sealed mem? Because the Kates is sealed off from us. However, the pasuk that talks about the breaching of Yerushalayim, that refers to the Galus. The Galus, we're all in Galus now. The walls of Yerushalayim are opened. They're breached. That's why, says Rabbeinu B'chaye, the walls of Yerushalayim Asher Haim, an open mem. They're open. They're gaping holes. The walls of Yerushalayim are breached open. There's no security. There's no tranquility. So when it talks about the Yemais HaMashiach, it's a closed mem. When it talks about Golos, it's an open mem. Our tradition is, says Rabbeinu B'chaye, when the rules of Yerushalayim are now sealed shut, and the Haim with the open mem is sealed shut with the closed mem, then we'll be Zoicha to Lemarbe HaMisra u'Lashalom ein kates. In other words, the pasuk in Nehemiah is an Arev, is a guarantor, is the security for the pasuk in Yeshaya. When that pasuk in Nehemiah ceases, when our walls are no longer breached, when they're no longer gaping open, when God finally restores the security of the walls, then we'll be Zoicha to Lemarbe HaMisra u'Lashalom ein kates. Okay. There's a commentary on Masechta Idyos called Shushan Ha'edos. He quotes Arizal. Arizal says, what we learn from these two psukim is that the open mem represents Golos. Right? Because Asher Hema Prutzim. That's the open mem is a reference to the breached walls of Yerushalayim. And the closed mem represents Geula. So now we see a little bit already why the floating mem is such a dangerous symbol. The open mem represents Golos, it represents danger. But we haven't even begun yet. Says the Shushan Ha'edos a davar nifla, a wondrous thing. Take the final mem. Look at, right? Picture it in your mind's eye. Right? Everybody see? Right? You could be looking at me, I could be looking at you, but you see it in your mind's eye, the closed mem. It's a rectangle. What happens when it's breached open? Diagonally. When it's breached open diagonally, you know what you have? You have two letters. You have two Dalids. You have a Dalid forward, correctly, and you have an upside down Dalid. When the closed mem is breached open, you have two Dalids. You have two Dalids. One Dalid is standing tall, but the other Dalid is upside down, facing the other way. Now the Gemara says the Dalid is supposed to be facing the hay. The Gemara says on Shabbos, because when you give Gemoil Dalim, when you give tzedakah to the poor, hay is the name of God. So you're already close to Hashem. But when the mem is sealed, you don't have two Dalids. You have a sealed Davar Shalem. When the mem is opened up, and now it's not a closed mem anymore, now it's an open mem, you have two Dalids. When you have two Dalids, that means one of the Dalids is facing away from Hashem, and one of the Dalids is upside down. That's the Golos. The Galus is the open mem. The closed mem is the Geula. The closed mem represents the walls of Yerushalayim, when none of the enemies could get in, when none of the influences could get in. The open mem is the breached walls of Yerushalayim, Asher Heim Perutzim, and it represents two Dalids. And I'm thinking to myself, which two Dalids? Which two Dalids does the breached mem represent? This Arizal doesn't say. But of course, we all know, those of us who have been learning this subject, we understand, we recognize immediately, the two Dalids that are created by the breached final mem are the two Dalids that the Nachash stole. They're the two Dalids of the Dalid of Shakai and the Dalid of Alef Dalid Nun Yud. The reason why the Ois Mem represents Misa, because the Ois Mem is exactly what happened when Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas. Because when Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, the Nachash stole the Dalid of Shakai, the Nachash stole the Dalid of Alef Dalid Nun Yud. That was basically separating the Dalids. When you separate the Dalids, the walls of Yerushalayim are breached open. The nations of the world have control over the Mekayimos HaKadoshim. The reason why the letter Mem represents Misa is the letter Mem is exactly what happened when the Nachash seduced Chava. Nachash Hishiani. V'oichel, the Nachash seduced me. So here we see Dvarim Neflaim, that there are two psukim in Tanakh. One pasuk has a final mem in the middle of the word. Lamar Bei HaMisra, that's because La'asad Lavai, everything will be sealed in. The two Dalids will be restored. But as long as we're in Golos, Asher Heim Prutzim, the two Dalids are taken apart. So says the Sefer Eidos Shushan, when we start learning Shas, we start with an open mem. That's the state of the world before we start learning Gemara. However, what did Arizal tell us? Arizal told us, Ashrei Adam Shoymei Ali Lishkoid Al Dal Soisa Yoim Yoim. If a person learns Torah in the morning, a person learns Torah in the evening, he takes the two Dalids, he puts them back together, he seals in the final mem, he makes sure the walls of Yerushalayim are not Heim Prutzim, he makes sure they're Lamar Bei HaMisro L'Shalom Ein Kates, he seals up, how does Shas end? Hashem oiz la'amo yitain, Hashem yivarech es amoy v'ashalayim. That's the connection. The floating mem means that the final mem has been cracked open, the two Dalids have gone free, the Dalid is lost from the Shakai, the Dalid is lost from the Alef Dalid Nun Yud, Nachash, Hishiani, Va'oichel. But with Siyata D'Shmaya, we embark on Talmud Bavli, we embark on Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, we start Me'ei Masai, and through learning, we're Zoicha to, what does the Medrash say? Ein hagoliyos miskansois, ela b'schus ha-mishnah. The Medrash says, you have it on your sheet. The Medrash in Vayikra Rabbah, number 26. Ein kol hagoliyos halolu miskansois, ela b'schus mishnayis. Why b'schus mishnayis? Because the Mishnah begins with the open mem. The open mem represents the state of the world after the Chet, when Nachash Hishiani, when the two Dalids went lost. But by being diligent in learning Torah in the morning, in the evening, we restore, we recapture those two Dalids, we fuse them together, and we're Zoicha that instead of the walls of Yerushalayim Hema Prutzim, we're Zoicha to Lamarbe HaMisra, U'Lashalayim Ein Kates, Hashem Oiz Amo Yitain, Hashem Yivarech Es Amoy, Vashalayim, Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.